Here's Bob and Suzanne.
Chicken joke!
I'm Mrs. Cleaver.
From Television City in Hollywood.
Boy, the way Glenn Miller plays.
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
We're on a mission from God.
Run, Forrest, run!
We can rebuild him. We have the technology.
You had me at hello.
Nanu.
Baby, you're the great.
I'm not going to be ignored.
Here comes the judge.
Go ahead. Make my day.
I got nowhere else to go.
Small cowbell.
That fashion.
There's anything wrong with that. You can't handle the truth.
I'm not an actor. I'm a movie star.
That's the story of my life. No respect. I don't get no respect at all.
I'm the dude.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
And now for something completely different.
There's no business like show business, like no business I know.
Welcome to Where Hollywood Hides. This is podcast number 54. My name is Bob McCullough.
And my name is Suzanne Herrera McCullough.
Hi, Suzanne Herrera McCullough. How are you?
I'm good.
It's been a while since we've done this.
It has. And why?
Well, we've been really busy. Before we go on, though, I want to introduce the audience to Dude, the Wonder Dog, who is in the room with us. So if you hear any odd sounds, it's a miniature pinscher who really wants to be part of the show.
Who can't really live without us, so
Right.
He's driving us nuts.
Yeah, if we put him somewhere else, he'll just make more noise. So enjoy Dude. Well, of late, we've been super busy with the Los Angeles International Screenplay Awards, which I co-founded.
And I'm a judge.
And you're a senior judge.
Yes.
And we have a team of Hollywood professionals with a collective experience of more than 100 years. We're talking about directors, screenwriters, producers, agents, actors, and filmmakers.
And this is for all aspiring writers.
Exactly. And each and every one of our judges has a powerful resume reflecting extensive produced television and film credits. The reason we began the LA International Screenplay Awards is that people were very often coming to us with a script and saying, "Would you please read my script?" Well, after you've read about 50 scripts, you realize that people need more than just reading. They need real feedback and help. So we founded the Los Angeles International Screenplay Awards. You can find that at www.lascreenplayawards.com. We're located in the heart of Hollywood's film and television industry, and we're now considered the best in the business with our exclusive judging panel of established Hollywood industry professionals. One of the great offerings we have is full screenplay analysis. So just go to the website, check that out. Not only do we have an amazing competition that can be worth thousands of dollars to the winners, including industry contacts and promotion, things like that, but we can help you build a better screenplay. Now today, we're
talking about agents.
We're talking about agents. One of the most prominent agents in my experience is a fellow by the name of Marc Pariser, Pariser.
And along with us, there's Dude, by the way.
There's Dude.
Along with selling your script, the monumental task, of course, is finding a good agent. And we're going to be interviewing one of the best. And he'll be giving us a real insight about what it's like to be an agent and the different ways that you can get an agent.
Marc was an agent at both William Morris and Creative Artists Agency.
Huge agencies.
CAA. And uniquely, Marc is one of the nicest guys in the business. And I think you'll find that out as you hear our conversation with him. So, let's get into it. Well, Marc, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you doing this. You are one of the industry leaders that we've been trying to chase down for quite some time. It's not everybody who can say they've been an agent both at William Morris and at CAA and have moved into management. And you've had a very long career, haven't you?
I hate to say it, but yes.
Well, that makes two of us. Well, like we always do, let's start at the beginning.
What I really want to know, Marc, is, agents used to, and I'm sure they still do, have a reputation of being a little aggressive and pushy, and because that's a real talent. Not everybody can be that way. When you were little,
I thought it was a character flaw, not a talent.
Oh no, it's a talent, especially if you're in the business, for sure, right? So when you were a little boy, were you couldn't be shy, right? I mean, were you a pushy little guy? Were you?
No, I wasn't at all. I was actually, when I was very young, I was kind of shy.
Really?
Yeah, but I got more social as I grew older. By high school I wasn't that shy, but I was never aggressive or anything.
Interesting.
Well, certainly the agency business requires you to be very social, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a social business, it's a schmoozing business. Look, any kind of sales, it requires an ability to interact with people. When you're selling, toasters and cars and stuff, you're interacting with, a single client at a time. But as an agent, you're interacting with a whole community on behalf of your clients. So that's a different kind of a skill. Your breakfast, lunches, dinners, meetings, screenings, premieres, tapings, you're always out among people. And so if you're not comfortable being social, it's not the job for you.
So were you raised in Southern California around the business?
I was raised in Southern California, not around the business. My father was an architect. The exception to that answer is that in the last part of his life, the last 10 to 15 years, he switched from being an architect to being a set designer. So he was in the business in that sense, but as a set designer, I didn't get exposed to anything. He wasn't dealing with the development side of the business or salespeople or agents or studio executives. He was.
That's hardcore production, right?
Yeah, that's hardcore production, and he loved it. My dad was a kind of an academic and a studious guy, and what he loved about being a set designer was he wasn't just designing houses and shopping centers and whatnot. He got to whatever was required for a show, he got to do, and he loved going to the library and researching, for example, what a World War II submarine looked like on the inside so that he could design it, or some other, particular kind of set. And he really loved that part of it. And I got to go to an occasional taping or something like that. So that was my first exposure to the business. But even at that time, it didn't occur to me that I would work in it. Growing up, my goal was to be an artist. And I was, when I got to college, I studied art and philosophy.
That's quite a stretch from that to being an agent.
Yeah, I mean, most young agents are former law students or business students.
Or wannabe actors.
I encountered a couple of people that were former actors that switched over to agenting or being an executive. Yeah, art and philosophy was not the standard preparation for being an agent. So, and I actually had a first career. I mean, when I got out of college, I worked as an artist. I worked as a fashion illustrator, and I worked as a layout artist in an animation studio. So that was, I did that for several years before I switched over to agenting before I went to work.
But how, you make it sound so easy. That switched over to agenting.
Tell us about that.
That's a huge move.
Well, it was actually, and it wasn't a direct move. What happened was that once I got in the professional art world and I looked around at it, I felt that I was in two areas of art where there was a very small pinnacle of people that succeeded, and everybody else, were kind of the journeymen that struggled for jobs, because this was all freelance stuff. The fashion illustration was freelance. The layout artist at an animation studio wasn't freelance, but it was seasonal. It was television, primarily television work, so it was seasonal. Saturday morning, cartoons and that sort of thing, and a little bit of feature work. And I just decided that I wasn't as talented as some of my cohorts, and I wanted something more in life than just struggling for my next job, which, of course, anybody that's freelanced understands. And fortunately, and not because I had any kind of insight, I hadn't anticipated that both of those businesses were going to basically evaporate. Fashion illustration, within a very short time, stopped being hand-drawn, and it switched to photography. And now, of course, there's very little of it because newspapers are disappearing. And animation, after it went through kind of a lull, when it came back, it started to become computer animation. So there are fewer jobs for guys that were hand-drawing animation like me. There's still a few, but that whole business shrunk. In order to succeed in a shrinking business, boy, you better be one of the best. And I just didn't feel like I was one of the best. Anyway, so long story short, I looked around and said, now what do I do? I didn't really want to go back to school. And I started to explore areas that I had a personal interest in, travel and, whatever it was. And I would make, make lists of industries and kind of say, all right, where can I find something to do that's interesting? And I had a particular set of criteria when I was exploring careers, and perhaps I approach this a little differently than people normally do. Normally, people look for an activity that they really like to do professionally. And of course, that was one of my criteria. But the other criteria came from working in between jobs when I was an artist. In between doing art jobs, I drove a bus and I was a secretary and I sold furniture and I did all these different things. So retail and office stuff and working at a hotel and all this. And I realized when I was working in those various industries, it usually took me about 3 weeks to kind of understand the business and figure out, if I stayed in the business, where I'd be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, what my title would be and what my salary would be. Because all of those industries have a pretty clear linear trajectory in terms of promotions and titles. They're very strict about pay increases every year. It's 3 to 5% merit increases in most businesses. And the minute I figured that out, the whole thing became boring to me.
So how old were you when you were in this process?
I was 25 years old.
Wow, you were an organized young man.
It didn't feel like that at the time, but I guess I was. So I looked around and what I saw in the entertainment industry, and I knew very little about it because I didn't really know anybody in it. What I saw was an industry where you could make a lot of moves, both up and laterally, into different kinds of jobs, and your experience had value and would come with you. And you had the potential to make small increases or huge increases in compensation or salary, because it's just the nature of the business. If you create success, you can make big money, and if you don't, you can make little money. That meant that it was a business that it was totally up to me how well I did. And it was totally up to me where I moved, and there was at least the opportunity over a long career to continue to remain challenged and interested by moving into different kinds of jobs.
So knowing that, how does one strategize the break-in process? I mean, breaking in is...
Well, so that's a really good question, because there are only a couple of ways. If you're not a writer or a director or an actor, there are only a couple of ways to do it. And I didn't really know anything about the business. I knew that there were training programs at two of the big agencies, William Morris and ICM. This was 1976 now, so I was, as I said, 25, 26. And CAA had just been formed in 1976, so obviously it was still five guys and their wives answering the phone. So I did two things. I applied to the training program at William Morris and ICM, and I also applied to the Assistant Directors Training Program at the, I think it was the Directors Guild.
Yeah, the DGA, right.
DGA, yeah. Having no sense of wanting to go into production, but I just thought that sounded like an available entry point. ICM offered me a job, and I said yes, and went to work in the mailroom at ICM. I did get a little help kind of shoehorning into the training program at ICM, and this may have been a factor. My sister was dating a guy that was a veteran in the business. He was a manager, but he had been a performer.
There you go.
And he called a buddy of his who was an agent in the music department at ICM, and that guy gave me an introduction to the personnel director at ICM, and that introduction may have helped me. It may have got me in for an interview. I don't know.
Along with that and your personality, I'm sure you nailed it. But that's has always been true. I'm sure it's still true now. Nepotism.
It helps to know somebody.
It helps.
Warm introductions. I mean,
Yep.
If I had that I didn't get an interview at William Morris because nobody had made an introduction. So I was just another guy off the street. So, looking back, I'm sure him making the call to personnel helped me.
Yeah.
So what was that like, working a desk at ICM?
It's grunt work. I was in the mailroom for about 9 months, which was interminable.
But you realize people would have killed to have been in that mailroom.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
No.
it was the place to be if you wanted to be anybody at that time.
And I learned that very quickly. Once I got hired, I realized that I had grabbed a coveted spot, and I worked it hard. Even how I got the job as an assistant for one of the agents, I mean, I had to be creative about that. That didn't come through the normal channels. One of the first things I did was I set about making friends with all of the secretaries in the building.
Smart guy.
I pushed my mail cart around twice a day. I got friendly with everybody, all the assistants. I made sure that anytime they needed anything, they could call me and I'd be there for them. You know,
again, it's who you know. You're smart.
It's who you know, and and there were no computers in those days, so I was constantly running up and replacing typewriter ribbons and getting them whatever they needed. And so I got a call one day from one of the secretaries. They weren't even assistants. I mean, they were legitimately secretaries in those days. And she said, look, I've decided this business isn't for me. I'm going to go back to Chicago. I haven't told personnel yet. Do you want me to set up an interview for you with my boss, her agent, the agent she worked for? And I said, absolutely. So I went in there and I sat with the agent, and he asked me a couple of questions about my background and whatnot. And then he said, how fast do you type? And I said, well, I don't know. I think I type about maybe 55 words a minute. And a good secretary types about 95 words a minute or more. I type about 55. And he said, you take shorthand, because again, in those days, no computers. So
right.
Wow, that's a throwback.
So he said, you take shorthand. I said, well, no, I don't, but I'll take a class and I'll learn. And he looked at me and he said, why should I hire you? And he said something, I'm about to say something that today would be politically incorrect. But so he said to me, why should I hire you when I can hire somebody from the secretarial pool that's got better skills and it's nicer to look at?
Well, what?
Well, that's a compliment, but I understand what you say. About these days, you can't say much.
That's right. That's right. You can't imply that you're hiring people.
That's right. In those days, as a female, that was a compliment. Yeah. But
that's right. So, of course, that wasn't a compliment that did me any good. And I hadn't anticipated a question like that. And maybe what I'm about to say might have been an early sign that maybe I was headed in the right direction. So he said, so why should I hire you when I can hire, this other person out of the secretarial pool? And I said, if you look around and what I'm about to say was at the time total bullshit because I had no idea. I said, as you look around the business, the people that have, the agents that have trainees on their desks as opposed to secretaries are the more important agents. Mm-hmm. When people call your office and they get me, they're going to think you're way more important than you currently are.
Oh my God, you really pushed a button.
And he paused for a second and he said, you're hired. That was the start of my journey.
Wonderful. So you're on you're really the assistant. You're at the desk, they call it, I believe. You're really the right-hand man for this guy.
Yep. And so my primary responsibilities, aside from typing letters and answering phone calls, was making sure in the afternoon when he was coming back to the office from a trip out to one studio or another, because he would spend several afternoons a week out at the studios, he would call in first to see whether there were any messages. Had to call before he got in his car because there were no cell phones. Based on how he sounded, I got a sense of how stressed he was. And so when he got back, I would either have a whiskey or a glass of wine sitting on his desk waiting.
Sounds good to me.
And of course, my first task in the morning was washing out the coffee cups and the whiskey glasses that he had left on my desk the night before he went home.
Oh, you were a good assistant for sure.
Really?
That's what we did. So
you understood the politics of it right away.
Oh, absolutely. And he was a nice guy. Believe me, he was a great guy. He's still in the business, and and I, every bunch of years I reconnect with him in one way or another, and we say hi. But it was a great experience. But I was actually in the mailroom. I said 9 months. I was actually in the mailroom for 11 months, and I was on his desk for 9 months. And ICM at the time didn't have much of a formal training program. I think that I was the only assistant on a desk in the whole company back then, but there was a trainee that was a motion picture department assistant, so he would read for agents and stuff like that. And there was a guy that was officially a reader who ultimately became a successful film writer after being an agent for a short time. So there were only maybe 2 or 3 other people that had some sort of trainee job, and I was the only one on a desk. And so I didn't see any opportunity for a promotion anytime in the near future. And I was getting tired of coming in every day and washing out coffee cups and typing letters and filing. particularly filing. I hated
Well, and those
filing.
are long days. Those are not 8-hour days.
No, they're not 8-hour days. Being the impulsive individual that I am, I just decided I'd had it with being an assistant. I wanted to be an agent, but I had it with being an assistant, and I just gave notice one day. Everybody thought I had secretly gone out and found a job that I wasn't telling them about, and I said, no, I haven't found a job. I just don't want to be an assistant anymore. So then, of course, I had 2 weeks to figure out what I was going to do next, and I got a couple of job offers from small agencies. I got one offer from one of my boss's clients to become his assistant, which I didn't want to. He was an on-air entertainment personality for one of the networks. And I didn't want to do that. So I took a job at a small agency.
So did you feel you were prepared, that you were knowledgeable enough at that point to go out and represent clients on your own?
I didn't even think about that. Honestly, I just didn't even think if I was prepared enough. I just was bored and I needed more challenge. And I'm not sure, frankly, whether anyone is ever prepared when they take on something they haven't done before. You don't discover whether you're prepared until you do it. Till you try to do it. Being prepared, I mean, depends on how you define being prepared. You when you stretch and you do something you haven't done before, you never know everything about it. You only need to know enough to kind of muddle through while you learn more.
So you had basically just an innate confidence that whatever you went after, you were going to learn what you needed to know and
Absolutely.
Proceed. Uh-huh.
Absolutely. I always had the confidence that I could figure things out and, that I do okay.
So that goes back to Suzanne's earlier question. Were you
a confident little guy?
A confident little guy. You may not have been pushy, but you knew what you wanted to do, and whatever you were doing at the time, there was something better.
Yes, I was confident on a certain level, but
not arrogant. Yeah.
Well, not arrogant, but also, life being a kind of a constant duality. I was confident about my ability and totally insecure about the fact that I was now living in a world that I was totally unfamiliar with, intimidated by celebrities and people that were making a lot of money because I didn't grow up around a lot of money. And so I felt for a long time like a stranger in a strange land. But it turned out that I was very good at my job. And so that insecurity wasn't apparent to anybody. And I, started doing well right from the beginning.
Mark, do you remember your very first client?
Yes.
Male or female?
Female.
And how did that go?
So this was a lady that was represented at William Morris, interestingly enough.
Oh.
She was still right at the beginning of her career. And I don't remember how she came to me, but she gave me a couple of scripts to read. They were very rough. They were kind of raw in their writing style, but emotionally very powerful. And remember, my only experience with scripts was doing script coverage at ICM when I was in the mailroom and an assistant. So, whatever knowledge I had about scripts that I'd accumulated over, a slightly less than 2-year period at ICM. So I liked her material. It was really raw. I met her, I liked her, and I just said, well, I wanted to represent her, and I just had a sense that I could sell her. And the very first job I got her was a rewrite on a script for an MOW. She got paid $7,500. The producer was Ed Feldman, who was then under contract at MGM. You probably remember him.
Oh, sure.
That was a lot of money in those days, too.
Yeah, it was kind of normal rewrite money. It wasn't too little. It was kind of right in the sweet spot of rewrites. And that was her first job. And here was the trick to getting her writing improved with each assignment. But the reason she was able to have a career at that point, when her writing was still pretty raw, is that I could send her into a network to pitch an MOW, which is the area she worked in, Movies of the Week. She had an affinity for true stories, these human dramas, family dramas and whatnot. And when she would tell a story, she'd always bring the executives to tears. I mean, they'd pull out the Kleenex and everybody would be crying. And they were so moved by her verbal pitch that they had to give her a chance to write it. They just couldn't say no because they were so moved.
Oh, that's a talent.
Yeah, and if you're a great storyteller, and this is something writers don't always understand early on, that before you ever get a chance to write, you better learn how to be a performer and tell a story. And she just had a natural gift for it. And so her first 2 or 3 jobs were, I think, simply a result of the fact that she would wow them when she was in the room with them. And her writing got better, and she just had steady work from that point forward, writing movies of the week.
So that was your first start with a client, and you were at ICM at that time?
No, I was at a small agency that no longer exists called Talent Management International.
Uh-huh.
Talent Management International was owned by 2 guys, one of whom is still an agent, and they had bought the William Schuler agency, and William Schuler represented only actors and predominantly child actors. And they bought that agency, and they hired me to come in and start a lit department. Imagine my first gig, and I'm tasked with starting a lit department. Nobody on the literary side of the business in town knows this agency. And of course, nobody on the literary side of the business knows me, because I haven't been out in the world as an agent yet.
Sure.
So my task is to go out there, find clients, introduce both me and the agency to the buyers, and start selling. You know, I didn't have the assist of a name on the door that everybody recognized, or, you know, literary mentors that could take me by the hand and introduce me to producers and buyers. I was just out there, you know, scratching around on my own.
So how did you get from that small agency into William Morris?
So I was recruited by William Morris, but there's a story behind how that happened. I was at the small agency for 1.5 years, and then I got a call one day to go in and have a meeting at William Morris. They had an opening in their TV lit department, and they didn't want to promote for that opening. They wanted to hire an agent. Now, the way that happened is that there was a young man who was also a young lit agent in the business, about my age, started out about the same time. And he was interested in this client that I just told you about. He knew that there was an opening at William Morris for an agent, and he knew some people there. I think he'd been in the training program there or whatever and had left. He gave them my name to interview me for the job. And his reasoning was that if I get the job at William Morris, he assumed that my client who had left William Morris to come sign with me wouldn't want to go back to William Morris. She would then become a free agent, and he'd have an opportunity to sign her. So he dropped my name at William Morris so that they would interview me for the job. So of course I got the job, and she came back to William Morris with me, and he never got the client.
Yeah, so much for being Machiavellian, my God.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we became friends, and remain friends to this day.
Going from a small agency to William Morris, that's a cultural shift of some magnitude.
Yeah, it was. But again, I adapted, and it gave me an opportunity to expand my business and sign better people and work with a team and have access to more information, because now you've got a team of agents gathering information about what's going on in town. You're not trying to cover the whole community by yourself, which at that time, nevertheless, was a much smaller community than it is today. So yeah, it was a cultural shift. I mean,
as a client myself of some of these agencies, it always struck me that they were like warring countries. ICM, William Morris, CAA, they were always really working strategy against each other.
Competitive, for
either
sure.
Stealing agents or stealing clients or
absolutely, absolutely, all the time.
It's like an ongoing battle.
And within the agencies, the individual agencies, agents are competing with each other. There's a pretense of we're all family and we'll all work together, and sometimes it's true, but by and large, there's a lot of interoffice competition and politics. And when it's not competition, it's simply agents focusing on their own client list and not helping each other with their, with others, other agents' clients.
Well, if you think about the kind of person who becomes an agent like yourself, they're very confident, they're incredibly bright and articulate and competitive.
Yes.
I'm not to say they're self-aggrandizing, but survival of the fittest, it's kind of a Darwinian environment in many ways.
Exactly. Even in an environment, which CAA was when I first went there, where there's genuine teamwork. For a while, young agents, as the agency became more and more successful, the young agents never believed that they would be recognized for their part in teamwork. And so they were always endeavoring to make things happen and that they could get credit for themselves.
Sure. How does that affect the individual client when you're with a large agency like William Morris Endeavor or CAA? Is your career affected by the internal politics of those companies?
Whether or not it's affected and how it's affected, if at all, is totally dependent on how your primary agent represents you and what kind of work he or she is doing and how they're representing you within the company, within the agency, and out in the community. You know, when I had my own agency years later, I had a thing that I did when people would come in, when potential clients that I had read and decided I wanted to meet them to consider representation, they'd come in for a meeting, and I'd start every meeting the same way. I'd say to them, do you want to hear the small agency pitch, the mid-size agency pitch, or the big agency pitch? Because I can make them all, and I can make them all sound great. The point of saying that to them was that you shouldn't be evaluating me based on how big my agency is or how big somebody else is. You need to evaluate the individual that's representing you, whether they get you, whether they understand you, whether you feel comfortable with them, whether they have the experience, the contacts, the relationships, and whether you think they're going to work hard for you. And that's all that matters. It doesn't really matter, in my opinion, whether you're at a big agency or small agency.
But, as a client, when you're signed with a large agency, you meet with probably a half a dozen people, and they say, oh, we're all going to work for you. And you wind up dealing with one person only. The feeling I got sometimes was that I was being traded off against other clients with the buyers. In other words, if you don't need Bob right now, we've got Suzanne waiting in the wings for you.
Well, so this goes back to what I said about the individual, because there are agents within WME or CAA or ICM or UTA that when they see a job opening, they will simply send over a list of their available clients. And then there are other agents who will call the buyer and say, you need to read Bob McCullough because he's right for this job. They don't talk about anybody else until you get read and you get a shot at it. I called an executive producer who had a new series picked up at CBS one day, and he was looking for writers. And I called him on a Friday afternoon, and I said to him, I have one person to submit to you, only one person. And you need to read this guy and you need to meet him because you're going to want to hire him. And I'm not going to submit anybody else to you, whether you hire him or pass. I'm not going to submit anybody else to you. This is the guy. I said that, and I certainly was intending to follow through that way. But I also said that to impress on him how strongly I believe that this guy was right for the show. And long story short, that was a Friday afternoon. Monday morning, he met with the guy, and Monday afternoon, he hired him.
So what you're saying is the agency isn't nearly as important as the agent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, there are some advantages to the big agency. The business is very broad these days. Agents can't cover everything. And so within the agency, they specialize. They cover certain places. Yes, they share information. Whether or not they actually help each other, to open doors and push their clients, that's different from individual to individual, but they do share information. And agents at the big agency generally have access to way more information about what's going on around town than small agents. Small agents these days, by necessity, have to be specialized because it's too big an industry, too broad a landscape for any one person to cover. Exactly.
So, Mark, listen, you're a busy guy, and I don't want to keep you all day, but I do want to touch upon. Tell us what you're doing right now. I see your website looks pretty fantastic, and you offer people something for free. Tell us about that.
I don't actually offer it for free. I offer 20 minutes for free.
Well, 20 minutes of your time is worth a lot.
I mean, the 20 minutes is really so that people have an opportunity to evaluate whether they can benefit from a coaching, an hour or 2 hours, or ongoing coaching. The reality is that agents learn how to navigate the business. That's you can't help it. When you do that, when you're out talking to all the buyers and representing different kinds of artists, you become adept at navigating the business.
And this is just for writers?
No, writers, actors, directors, producers, even worked with a music composer.
Okay.
And because it's less about me knowing their work and more about how to navigate how to open doors, how to get to executives or agents or managers, how to present yourself, how to present your material, whether your material is a script or whether it's, a sizzle reel for a show or whatever.
Sure. So let's say I'm a young filmmaker from Iowa and I want to get in the business. Are you the kind of guy who might be able to point me in the right direction?
Yeah. I mean, I would look at who you are, what you've done, and the goal would be to together figure out to define an actionable strategy for how to move your career forward. Who you should call, how you find people, how you get to them, how you get your calls returned, how you get your queries answered. Unfortunately, most people are looking for a silver bullet, which doesn't exist. Anybody that's been in the business for more than 10 minutes understands that this is a fluid process. And so you try things, and when they don't work, you try something else, and you keep doing that and try to be creative and think outside the box until you start to open doors. And sometimes that happens quickly for some people, and generally it takes a while. There are some people that come to me that book me for multiple coaching sessions, which I always think is a great idea. Many people come for one session, and generally whatever they come to me for, sometimes it's a project issue, sometimes it's a career issue. We outline a strategy for resolving that issue, and then it's something for them to go out and do themselves. I don't, as a coach, I don't represent them. I don't make calls. I don't even read their material, because I'm not judging how commercial or viable their material is. I'm just dealing with questions of nobody's
Sure.
responding to my query letters.
Sure. So you don't take people by the hand and walk them through the door, but you do give them kind of a worldview of where they're at and what they need to do next.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: I'm this young filmmaker from, I think I said Iowa. Do I need to be in LA to make this happen?
No. We can do Skype sessions or phone sessions. I like things in person because I like to get a sense of the personality, because one of the things that artists need to learn is how to network. And I meet some people and they're really shy. They want to be an actor, they want to be a writer, but they're shy. Writers in particular tend to be solitary, figures that like solitude. Also, artists oftentimes think that selling is beneath them, and they don't really understand the fact that we're all selling something to somebody. And if you're not comfortable selling yourself, your journey to success is going to be much, much tougher. I had an interesting experience years ago. Early in my agenting career, I was invited to speak at a writers' symposium at the University of Washington. I was on a couple of panels. It was a weekend thing. During one of the breaks after a panel that I had been on, I was standing out in the lobby of this auditorium, and some people had gathered around and were asking me questions. And somebody asked me a question. I had mentioned that I had had a first career as an artist. This young woman asked me about that and said, well, why did you quit that business? And I said, I got into it and I did it for a few years, and I realized, I loved it, but I realized I didn't really have enough talent, I thought, to really succeed. I wanted to find something to do that I could do better than other people and that I could really succeed at. And she said to me, it's really sad that you gave up your art. And I said to her in response, what I think is really sad are people that don't see themselves objectively enough and toil for years, sometimes decades, pursuing something that they have no chance of achieving. And in order to operate in that business, you have to have the capacity to have a certain objectivity about your art.
Yeah, I think people have to look up from their work once in a while and look at the world around them and see what else is going on and where they fit into that. I think one of the keys to your success, Mark, and I'm looking at your website page right now, you have the best smile of any agent I've ever seen. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, whatever gets you in the door. So
I had an experience when I was in the mailroom at ICM. One of the first agents that I ever read a script for was an elderly agent, veteran agent named Ben Benjamin. Ben was a very classy guy. He'd been an agent for decades, and he represented, wonderful people, Burt Lancaster and Robert Anderson, the playwright, and all kinds of really great people. Ben was a classy gentleman in the old world sense. I looked at Ben and then I looked at all the other agents and I said to myself, and again, 26 years old, had no experience in the business. And I looked and I said, what I get from knowing Ben is that it's possible to be a nice guy and be yourself and still be successful.
Again, you have a great smile and you look great on the website. Tell us how people can reach out to you, because a lot of our listeners have real aspirations to joining everybody in the entertainment industry, and I think it behooves them to talk to somebody like you and get a real perspective on reality.
Well, they can reach me through the website. I mean, there's a contact me link, and that they can send an email directly to me, and I mean, easy to find.
And that's it. So, that's at marcpariser.com.
MarcPariser.com.
Marc, I can't thank you enough for doing this with us. Our listeners are going to be very excited to hear your perspective on the reality of a career in the business.
And I would say to people who are considering a career, on the one hand, it's extremely competitive, more so than it's ever been. The barrier to entry is always difficult, but if you really want it, you can get it. But you have to come to it with an appetite to learn. You have to learn about the particular skill that you endeavor to work in, the history of, films and the history of people that have done what you do. You have to learn who the players are in the business. You have to learn how to, as you said, lift your head up and look around once in a while and take a step back from the subjectivity of the art and look at the objectivity of marketing yourself. And if you've got the skill and the talent and the desire, you can succeed.
Well, I think having a coach would have been great. When I started in the business, I didn't have a clue. And you're right. There's even though there's a lot more opportunity, a lot more jobs in show business, there's also a lot more competition. Having a coach, I think, is pretty valuable.
Well, here's the thing about coaching and the reason that I decided to do it. First of all, I love writers in particular. I love talent, but I love writers in particular. And I love being an advocate for them, which is why I'm kind of slipping on a very, very limited basis back into management a little bit these days. But there are many, many people trying to navigate the business who are not represented. And there are a lot of people who are represented who don't really know what their agents are doing and aren't clear what, if anything, they can do to help their agents or even how to manage their agents. And if you look at the few people that are out there doing career coaching, there really aren't former agents doing it.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of folks out there claiming they know what they're talking about, but how many people have actually spent a career in the trenches like yourself?
That's right. So I believe that we're able to offer something to people, whether they're represented or not. It's helpful. I had a woman come to me about a year ago. Her daughter was a 23-year-old actress. The girl happened to be, at that moment when her mother came to me, was in a George Clooney movie that was in the theaters at that moment. The girl had an agent, a mainstream agent, and a manager. And there was a film casting, and she wanted to go in for a particular role on this film. And for some reason, her agent and her manager were not setting up this meeting with the casting director and the director of the film. And she was very frustrated. She didn't know why they were blocking her, because that was her sense, is they were actually preventing her from going in. The mother came to me and set up an appointment, and we talked about how to deal with that. She was worried about going around the agent and manager and making them angry and having them fire her daughter. And so we figured out a way for the girl to get, the young woman, to get to the casting director. She ended up being seen by the casting director and the director. Both of them liked her very much. She didn't get the role because she wasn't right for it for whatever reason, but she now had a fan and a director and a casting director. And again, we did that without her agent and manager knowing or being upset. And so that was a very, very specific kind of a problem that I helped solve. And so these moments, you don't have to, if you can get some help and some guidance, you don't always have to be at the whim of other people that have control over what's going on. I mean, you have to find ways to empower yourself and to, if not control your destiny, certainly have more impact on your destiny.
Well, that's the word, empowerment. So I just recommend anybody looking for that kind of advice, that kind of help, that kind of counsel, coaching, check Marc out at marcpariser.com. Hey, Marc, thanks so much for doing this. I look forward to seeing you soon. You know, we're up in Santa Barbara. Next time you're up here, let's grab lunch.
I would love to do it. I hope it's been helpful to your listeners.
Absolutely. Hey,
Thanks, Mark.
Hey, take care. We'll talk soon, man. Thanks.
Talk soon. All right.
Bye-bye. Well, that was good. I learned a lot. It's a little late maybe for me. But
I told you Mark was one of the nicest guys in the business.
I have a question for you. How long did it take you to find a really good agent when you just started?
5 years.
5 years.
And I was writing constantly the whole time. And I made the mistake of getting a bad agent more than once.
Well, because we've all been through that where we think a bad agent is better than no agent.
Well, that's not necessarily true.
No, I know.
And it took me a couple of years to figure that out. But
me too.
Yeah. Getting an agent's kind of a critical issue, and a guy like Marc Pariser is the kind of guy that can make it happen for you. As a matter of fact, I want to remind everybody to check out Marc's website at marcpariser.com. That's MarcPariser.com, where Marc offers personalized one-on-one career coaching for people who work in the entertainment industry. Whether or not you have representation, a guy like Marc can really help you clarify and define your career path. He can create a roadmap to get where you want to be professionally. You know, a successful career requires more than just pitching, selling, auditioning, and looking for your next job. Marc can help you increase your chances of making agents and personal managers want to sign with you. So I would recommend anybody looking to get in the business or who may already be in the business, check out Marc's website at marcpariser.com.
Also, we have a couple new books on the market.
Well, I'm a little embarrassed to talk about my own stuff.
Come on.
But here's the reality about being a screenwriter in today's world. Without representation at a Hollywood literary agency, selling your screenplay and becoming a professional screenwriter is almost an insurmountable process. Today, the quickest path to getting paid for your work is to do well in a major screenplay contest. You know, winners and finalists get noticed quickly. They make valuable industry connections, and they often sell their scripts for serious money. Well, guess what? I've written the book that will help you do just that.
What a coincidence.
The name of the book, because I'm a little impatient with all of what I see going on and how screenwriters are being exploited. The name of my book is Stop Screwing Around and Win Your Next Screenplay Contest.
Catchy title, Bob.
Thank you. You can find that at Amazon.com. It's only 100 pages. It's a bargain.
It's a quick read, but it's a great read.
It's a quick read that will put you leagues ahead of the competition if you're a screenwriter. Again, that's Stop Screwing Around and Win Your Next Screenplay Contest, and that's at Amazon.com. And that's all I'm going to sell today.
Okay, good for you.
Well, this was a lot of fun. I hope we can do this again real soon. You know, I want to say one thing.
Yes.
I love you.
I love you too.
Until next time, this is Bob McCullough.
And this is Suzanne Herrera McCullough. We'll see you in the movies.
They come from Chilicotes and Paducas with their bazookas to get their names up in lights.
All armed with photos from local rotos, with their hair in ribbons and legs in tights. Hooray for Hollywood! You have no way of knowing who'll make good.
Maybe you'll be another Papa Dion, your name in neon. If you get lucky, you could. Yes, buddy, you'll arrive if you can top his 5. Hooray for Hollywood!
Hooray for Hollywood!